as I choke. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Magical Merriment Mondays. Oh my goodness. I shut down. I'm taking a drink of water, clearly. All right. Well, welcome. Happy Monday. It's been 2 weeks, and now my face is so red. Woo! Okay, so what's been going on with you? Welcome. Thanks for joining. And I want to know what has been happy in your world. What is your magical merriment moment in the last 7 days, in the last 2 weeks, in general, this month? It's August right now at this moment in time. So I'm going to share with you some things that have been going on in my world. And the goal of this is to make you feel inspired that every 2 weeks that we check in, that you have something fun to share and you're looking for them out in the world. There is data-backed evidence for us to have like a goal, at the dinner table, so to speak. When we are looking for good things out in the world, we'll find more of them. And if we have like a purpose to share them, then we'll find even more. So some things that I found fun and happy and enjoyable were my friend April. She sent me this text, and it was from that app, the Citizen app, that tells you kind of things that are happening out in the world in your area. And it said that there was a lion in the street, and I know, good morning, hi Kathy. There was a lion in the street, and I know that might seem for a lot of people like, well, that's clearly far-fetched. In just like less than 10 years ago, there was a bull out in the streets of Baltimore. So it's not that unusual for us to have very, very strange things. There's a zoo here, and I was like, oh, a lion escaped. And I texted her back and I was like, do you want to come? Because I'm going to go find this thing. And she was like, I'm not coming. Like, I'm decorating my kid's room. And I was like, listen, get your shoes on. Like, this is a lion. This might not be back again, right? So I was like, you're not going to remember delaying this for 2 hours on your deathbed. You're going to remember finding the lion. She's like, if there's the lion, I'm going to be mad that I didn't go with you. And I was like, exactly. Like, I was out the door by the time that she was explaining this to me. I had my shoes on. That's kind of how I live my life. And I encourage you to live yours. If you find out there might be a lion on the street, you need to get going. Turns out people just can't spell, and they were saying someone was lying on the street, and it was in fact corrected. So that happened. But I was on my way there. I've honestly never been so really disappointed by the lack of education and spelling, because I really, really wanted to see a live lion in the street. But on the way back, I saw all these really cool lava lamps, and that's what you're seeing in the slideshow, and why I'm on that little tangent right now. Another thing was feeding koi fish. There's this really cool, they call it a conservatory here, but it's mostly just it's like a little botanical gardens. And I noticed that there was one of those little gumball machines that you can get something out of, and I was like, what's that for? And they were like, oh, you can feed the koi fish if you'd like to. And I was like, of course I'd like to. So I did that. And also just a lot of really wonderful plants, and from all different kinds of places. That's a really cool thing about a botanical garden situation, that you can experience all sorts of different places in one space. Also, Artscape, that's like the biggest free arts festival, at least on the eastern part of the United States. And I believe that it's cursed. One of the most objective news reporter publicist places. There's really only like the Baltimore Sun and the Baltimore Banner here in the city, but they do their best to be, as I believe, as straightforward as possible with their news. They released a thing about Artscape after it happened this past weekend that said, is it cursed? And I just thought that it was really funny that that was their real angle, because every single year it happens, no matter when they change it to, that there's a thunderstorm, there's hail, there's like an outbreak of a disease, it's the hottest day. It's like a real actual disaster that happens. But I actually got out of there half an hour before anything went down, and I like that at this point in my life I actually know who all the stilt walkers are and stuff, so it was cool. And I was with my friend and her daughter. It was her first Artscape, and I got to introduce her to that stilt walker, whose name is Jess. Okay, so what have you been experiencing? Please share in the chat what you enjoy right now, what your magical merriment moments are, which is just another way to say something you're enjoying, something that you experienced that was fun, something that you're grateful for, any way that you want to look at it. So let's go into this just in, sharing good news. So in my own personal life, um I oh well, this is actually the world news. Let's see what else we got here. How did I do this? There we go. So my good news is that I had a after we had like a bunch of storms here on Artscape, uh, I had a neighbor come over into my yard and knock on my door and tell me that one of our trees has a really big branch like dangling and it was going off or over into a power line. So I didn't notice it. So I'm glad that he took the time out to let me know. I think that's good news. Also, there was a really nice grocery store cashier and she was having a really hard time with these little like scan clearance tags, and she was clearly like having a lot of anxiety over it, and I was like telling her like, calm down, it's okay, not to calm down, you know what I mean, like it's breathe, it's okay, it's not your fault, like these things are not meant to scan, they're really awful. And she was worried about the pressure and the lines and all these things, and I I could tell that she was like, just, I've been there. I've been 18 and been worried about like the lines and stuff. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. You're doing great. Like you're doing everything right. And she was like, I'm just so stressed out. I could tell that she was going to have like a panic attack. And I left, and I keep these little goodie bags in my car. Call them Merriment mystery bags. And I went out and I'm teaching a live class right now. You can leave it here. Thank you. I I'll call you later. I'm teaching a live I have your Facebook. Okay, great. And sorry. I'm doing an event tomorrow for the community and somebody came over. Always somebody in my yard. Sorry. And where was I at? The grocery girl. So there was so I went out and I got her the merriment bag. I gave it to her and I saw her just like feel really surprised and happy. And then I took it a step further and I went over to the customer service and I asked if I could leave a positive review for her, like like a customer, like instead of complaining, like leaving a nice thing. And they said sure. And then this is what I wrote down for them. That's what the picture is, and that's the other picture of the tree, what the guy telling me, coming up to my door just like how that lady just did. And I asked them if there was anything else I could do to make sure that it was known that she was doing a really good job. And they said, if you want to call corporate, you can. That would actually go a lot further. So I called, but because it was a Sunday, they weren't open. And I put it on my list and I did it the next day. And they actually called me back. And while I was on there, I was like, the reason this is even a thing is because of those stupid clearance things. So I let them know. I was like, I have a good review and I have a negative thing too. And I want to let you know that those clearance things suck to scan. And they're creating a lot of strife for, customers and employees. And they called me back and they said, yeah, we know it sucks and we're working on it, but I want to let you know that we are working on it. And I was like, that's really nice. Cool. So it's not just good news when people do things for me, it's good news when I do things for other people, right? Spreading good news, merriment making. And then other good news out in the world that I noticed is Olek. She is a Polish yarn bomber. I've been following her since I knew about yarn bombing over a decade. She doesn't do that many things anymore, but I saw this and oh my God, it's like this giant, you gotta Google it. It's so good. This amazing giant McDonald's yarn bomb. It's so big in Poland. Oh my God, I love it. Okay. So that's my good news, both seeing, receiving, doing, and noticing. What have you seen there out in the world? What are you noticing and doing and sharing in terms of good news? Because if we're tired of all this negativity out in the world, you have to do it, you have to document it, and you have to share about it. And I actually have an entire other episode about good news here on my channel. Okay, so before we get into everything else, I just want to let you know about a free seminar, a free workshop that you can take. It's called Anxious to Awesome. And if you've ever been feeling overwhelmed by anxiety, which I'm guessing that you have, this is how you can take control and take control of your mental well-being and honestly transform your life, at least in the moment. Okay, so this is an exclusive masterclass. The full title is Anxious to Awesome: Practical Tools and Techniques to Manage Anxiety. It's a free seminar, and inside of it, you learn actionable techniques and insights that help you conquer anxiety and reclaim your sense of peace and confidence. So it can be that you're struggling with daily stressors or even more complicated challenges. I mean, if you're just meeting me now, I have 12 neurodivergent diagnoses. Okay. It's a lot. So if I can figure out how to manage myself and run a business and have relationships, then I understand that it's possible for you too. All right. So this masterclass it's a roadmap to creating like real stuff. I'm not the person that tells you to just take a bath. Like it's not helpful. That's pampering. That's not tangible control. All right. So it's physical techniques that'll help you feel calmer in the moment that are based on science, biology, physiology, and psychology. And they're ways to stimulate your vagus nerve. Also, we focus on that to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And I explain all of what that is. And if you don't know what mitochondria are, I help you understand what that is and explain how to heal your mitochondria. People have literally gone from being like paralyzed to being able to walk by healing their mitochondria. It's pretty insane. So you can get all of that. This little ticker thing that's going along the bottom here. It's uncustomary.org/anxiety. I can put it here in the little chat. It'll take you right to the sign up page. It's free. My cat just sneezed. Could you hear that? That was adorable. Was that Giuseppe? He never sneezes. Okay. And honestly, everybody that was in the class that when I did it live, also it's not something you have to wait for. That's another thing. I've already done it. It's taught. It's a replay. So you don't have to wait for it either. There's no anticipation creating more anxiety about it. You don't have to go live. You can just watch it. And everybody that came live, they went down at least 2 points. Most people went down to 3 or 4 points on the scale of anxiety of like 1 to 10, right? So if you can look on the sign up page, I like took screenshots of everybody because I before we did all like the exercises because I lead you through actual exercises, and I was like, okay, like what's your anxiety rate on a scale of 1 to 10, and people were like a 6 or a 7 before, and they went down to a 3. And that's insane, just to like go in a 10-minute span to move down 3 points. That's a lot. All right. So, I mean, the testimonials are really good. I mean, people were tearing up saying affirmations. There's like feeling warmth and softness where there was tension, feeling comfort and solidarity and community. And I mean, feeling more open in 1 minute than they ever have. Like, I mean, it's a very good thing. Okay. So just check that out. It's a free resources. Free resources. Ugh. Okay. So, all right. And while we're at it, before, I know it's a lot of preamble, that's just how things are. If you can like this video, like it. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. That makes me happy. Thank you. This week's topic is feeling your feelings, what you came here for. All right, so if you have ever struggled with dissociation or dulling your feelings, put a 1 in the comments. So this is from my Embodiment Masterclass, which is inside of the Merriment Makers. Okay. And the Merriment Makers is my signature group. It's the best thing that I've ever done in terms of creating something. It is everything, everything, everything. And you can find that. I'll put the link. Okay, we've got ones coming in. You can find that here at uncustomary.org/merrimentmakers. And in this whole, I'm not going to teach everything today, but honestly, that whole, the module of the embodiment that I teach in the Merriment Makers, I think is worth the entire price of everything. Just that module. And that's one module out of 30 modules. Actually, I think the masterclass that I teach is worth the price. And that's one resource inside of one module inside of 30 modules. And then there's other services and other resources on top of that. So, but the Embodiment Masterclass has, we talk about dissociation, we talk about avoidance, we talk about whether you're in need of embodiment, like what even it is, how to find out where the dissociation began, embodiment goals, how to practice embodiment, 52 modalities and tools for how to start, what to expect when you start, and, oh, hey, Jim, and getting stuck on anger, how to be embodied when you have a kid, how to be embodied when you have a job, when you have multiple roles in your life, and the arrival back to yourself and integration for embodiment. Okay. So all of that is just in one resource out of 40 in one module, and there are 30 more modules. It's a lot in the Merriment Makers. Okay. And right now I think it's 88% off because I don't think Akib has changed the sale price yet. So just saying. All right. So, what is embodiment? What is embodiment? Does anybody know? Does anybody want to share what they think embodiment is while I talk? Feel free. Keep the chat going. Embodiment and merriment making or self-love or really anything that I teach isn't for me about changing who you are in any way. It's about coming back to yourself. It's about coming home. It's about the arrival of who you always were. The purpose of like shadow work, you've probably heard a lot about shadow work in the self-development community, spiritual community, personal development community. It's a big general term for tools like journaling and tapping, EFT, or meditation, or things like embodiment practices, okay? And it's just a way to figure out how we feel and why we feel that way, and then creating space and movement for those feelings to be felt, to be processed and experienced in the best way for us, okay? So a lot of people call shadow work healing, like that's like the verb, right? And I don't really care about that. I don't really vibe with it. You can, that's fine. You can call it shadow work. You can call it healing. You can call it whatever you want. I don't really care. I believe that everything is everything, and everything is also nothing simultaneously. So words are important, and they're also just semantics. I like to think of it as just reconnecting back to our bodies instead of healing our bodies. Because to me, scars are important. I don't know. I think that I can believe that I don't know that I can heal an illness, a scar, or experience because it feels a little puritanical to me. But what does feel good to me is coming back and reconnecting and protecting. It's just kind of like a breakup. Like, I'm not going to say that we're not friends or lovers anymore. Like, I'm just going to say that we're back together now. You know what I mean? So if you see resources in literature that says a healing journey or whatever, then you can replace it with reconnecting if that feels better for you. Also, you can change it to something else that I'm not saying. There's also no difference between feminine embodiment and embodiment, except there might be some practices that are specific for female gendered discussions about wombs or something, right? The process and practice of embodiment is innately feminine in general in terms of energy, because femininity is about flow and feeling, and in general energy masculinity is about activating and making. So feeling your emotions is a feminine practice regardless of your gender or lack thereof. If you see a resource that says feminine embodiment, it's probably something you can use, okay? It's just words describing a different thing. Another important thing about embodiment and reconnecting is making space for all of your emotions. So that's the part that gets a lot of people. Sometimes this is what attracts people, and sometimes this is what turns people on their heels and leaves. So there's likely one specific emotion that you're avoiding, that you're dissociating, that you're burying deep down from the beginning. It might be grief, it might be shame, it might be fear or anger, or it actually might be joy. So I'm going to tell you today that the emotion is probably not the thing that you're scared of. It's the past experience you know is attached to it, and or the future expectation you believe will come in tandem with it. So what I mean by that is you're avoiding anger because you had a parent who walked out on you, and you've buried those feelings, and now you know if you actually look at the feelings, you'll feel angry. But it's more about reliving that experience with your parent that feels bad and horrifying to you. So you just compartmentalize the anger. Or you're avoiding joy because you think if your fully actualized self comes to be, it's what's going to bring you joy. And you're not really ready to ditch your habits that you're doing now that you know are going to keep you from becoming that fully actualized, successful person. And you believe your future expectation of joy is attached to becoming responsible, becoming accountable, and the release of numbing your habits. So you avoid feeling joy because you know that those feelings of joy are only like 15% of what you could feel if you stepped into the success of becoming your real self. Is that hitting for anybody? We're actually more afraid of success and joy than we are of our negative emotions. Or the reason that we're avoiding our anger or our fear or anything else is because of the memories that are attached to it. You can say anything in the chat to acknowledge that. So what these are limiting beliefs. That's when people are talking about limiting beliefs. That's just kind of like a tangible explanation of what that means. And they're not just necessarily in your way. They're just big, hefty topics that are complicated and woven up with trauma. Like that's what that is. And I believe that you are strong and capable of doing this alone if you believe that you can. And if you have even 1% doubt, then it's good to get help with a coach, a therapist, or a professional so that they can help you peel back the layers of the onion while you're doing it. So what is embodiment? The goal of embodiment is to A, exercise the pent up trauma and energy that's deep within you so there is more room for you to feel like yourself again. B, to be able to accurately identify your emotions and sensations in your body. C, create a release for energy and emotions and experiences that you process on a regular basis. And D, find it easier to experience things in daily life in a non-homogenized, present way. So, embodiment is a release, all right? It's like bottles and boxes being expressed in you. And what I mean by non-homogenized and present way is like tit to mouth, all right? Farm to table. It is no homogenization, no filter. You get to do what you want and feel how you want. So there is a lot of compartmentalizing and a lot of digging stuff deep down, pushing it down that we are doing because we think that it's appropriate, that we think that and this kind of goes in line with what we were talking about last week about worrying that we're too weird, that we're not going to be adult or professional or appropriate enough. So we're constantly worried about how we're appearing to others, and that can make us not feel like we are able to feel in the right context. So, I mean, and that's fair for some things, right? Like we don't want to lash out and be aggressively angry towards someone and hurt them, right? We want to be able to compartmentalize in some ways. We want to be able to level out things in front of children. We want to not necessarily break into tears in a conference room, right? There is some level of being an adult and knowing how to compartmentalize in a healthy way, right? That's really for other people. That is the spreading joy aspect of it. Like we are being kind in that way where we're not taking our emotions and hurting others with them, or we're benefiting ourselves by the perception of other people. And that's kind of like a whole other topic. But that doesn't mean that they go away. And that's the difference. So if you are feeling the urge to cry, if you are feeling the urge to lash out, if you are feeling the urge to do something and you are in a situation where you cannot, that needs to be understood. That needs to be written down, essentially. You kind of need to make like a list of all the times during the day that you need or feel that you want to express something and that you can't. And then you get to the end of the day or the end of the week, and there's a quote unquote container where you get to release. Okay? And there might be a time where you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, actually, I don't really care about that anymore. That's something that I'm not really, I was maybe overreacting to that, or I wasn't really, it just doesn't bother me anymore. And that's fine. But if you look at something and you feel activated by it still, then it needs something, something needs to happen about it. Okay? So an embodiment like container is kind of like, it's like therapy, right? Like we're setting aside a time for us to go and look at that stuff. So honestly, a pretty tangible tip would be to keep like a note in your phone of all the times that you're like, oh man, I wish I could. I wish I could. I wish I would. I wish that would, this is a good time where I would cry. This is when I wish I could punch. You know, whatever your thing is that you're not feeling like you can express, make a list. And then create a recurring time frame, whether it's daily or weekly, to do what is called somatic processing. And we'll get into that. But I'm just adding that in. Ideally, we would be able to do things a little bit more non-homogenized, where we are able to see something, think it, feel it, say it, express it immediately. And that's what I meant by like kind of creating a container, because there's not always the situation where we can do that, but there is the opportunity for us to do things more than we are. First of all, creating that container is very important, and most of us aren't even doing that. But secondly, a lot of us still think that we have to walk on eggshells with absolutely everything that we do, and not being able to express ourselves at all in general is killing us. It's creating a lot more resentment, bitterness, and anger that we're then going to need to express in another place. So there's a lot of things that are needing to be pushed down that don't necessarily need to be pushed down in general. So it's very possible that you need to work on communication skills before you're working on embodiment skills, or simultaneously. Thinking so much before we act is not necessarily always helpful. You know, athletes and artists are people that we adore and revere, and sometimes we act as bystanders in our own life. We adore athletes and artists because they are doing and feeling the thing, instead of all of us who are maybe too cowardly to only watch from the sidelines. So I want you to start acting like an artist and an athlete who is just in the moment and doing the thing. They're not thinking about how it looks. They're not thinking about what other people are thinking. They're just making the move. And we all have impulses to be childlike, but we need to say no to the things that we don't want in adulthood that we think that we're supposed to say yes to as well. Okay, so how do we do embodiment? How do we practice it? You have to acknowledge what area you're scared to confront. So earlier I mentioned, like, maybe you're scared to confront anger. Maybe you're scared to confront joy. Maybe you're scared to confront being jaded. Like, there's all sorts of different areas of feelings, okay? And then you need to figure out what emotions come up when you think about it, and what sensations come up when you think about it. So there's a difference between emotions and sensations. Emotions are mood-based and sensations are physical. So you can literally look up on Google like a long list of feelings and sensations, and it'll help you also with vocabulary and with identifying different ones that you might not have thought of. And if you're not sure what it even looks like to identify something like a feeling or a sensation, this is a really good tip. I want you to check right now if you have to pee. Do it. Do you have to pee? The answer is yes or no. What did you just do right now? What did you do in your body to figure out if you had to pee? It's weird, right? You can't really describe it. You sent your brain a signal to send your body a signal to find out a function in your body and like a feeling at the same time, and then see if it was full, and then kind of like send it back to your brain. But you did it, and you received an answer. And maybe it was like, well, I kind of have to pee, but I can definitely hold it. Or I know I'm good. I know I'm good. Or it's like, no, actually, I do have to pee. I can't believe I haven't gone yet. But that is a very similar or the exact process of what it looks like to walk through the feelings and sensations of your body, like a body tour. So when you think about being jaded, when you think about what it looks like to just thinking cognitively about what you're scared of, right? Thinking about your emotion that you're like, this is what I'm avoiding. Even, you know what? It doesn't even have to be the emotion. Let's think about the thing that you're avoiding. Is it your bank account? Is it your parents? Is it moving? Is it your health? Is it like, what is it that you're avoiding? You can be much more tangible than that, right? And then I want you to think about what's happening in your body. It can be something physical. It is going to be something physical, likely. I mean, it doesn't have to be something so aggressive as like your heart racing or your palms sweating. I think a lot of times we give those kind of examples, and it's like, it's probably not going to be that aggressive. It might be, but maybe your foot starts to bounce a little bit. Or you kind of notice like a little bit of like, it's not tightness necessarily, but it feels like thick or something in your chest, or you just kind of tense up a little bit, or you just feel stiff, or I don't know, like it's just somewhere in your body that just feels different. Just take a breath before you think about it, and just be, and then think about the thing that you're avoiding, right? The thing that you're dissociating from, the thing that you're avoiding. And now feel what feels different. That's all. Okay? And then the same way that you noticed, like, do you have to pee or not? That is the way that you're like, oh, okay, I'm aware that I know that I can do something. Anybody that says that they can't practice embodiment, that they can't check in with their body at all, that's not true, because you can tell if you have to pee or not. It's not sending you a signal the way that your tummy roars when you're hungry. You're checking in whether or not you have to pee. So you can do that. So I want you to find out where your body is different, a little different. And you'll know. You're the only one that can tell. Right? You're the only one that can tell. This has to be self-report. So where is it different? And then honestly, you can even look up like some interesting stuff, like From the Body Keeps the Score, or I mean, that might give you clues, but also you can just start breathing into that space. And what does that mean? That means like, it's really just imagining. Okay. So like, sometimes I'll tell my boyfriend to breathe into his shoulder or something. He's like, what the fuck does that mean? Right? So it's really annoying to hear things that we can't understand. So if you're having tension like right here, and I tell you to breathe into that, it's like, what does that mean? My breath is in my mouth. My breath is in my lungs, right? So I just want you to like close your eyes and visualize if you can. I also know that there's some of us that can't even visualize, so that's hard too. So just imagine anything you can logically about this space right here, or wherever the tension or the difference is in your body, and imagine that, and then breathe and just focus on your breathing and focus on that area. However it makes sense to you. You can imagine, if you are very visual, you can imagine a light or something going here, and just focus and breathe and imagine that the air or the light is going here. But just breathe and just really fill as much as you can and allow this to expand as much as you possibly can, wherever that is. But a lot of embodiment is about noticing and observing. It's about noticing what emotions come up when you feel and think about even just dealing with it at all. So if you are avoiding an action like looking at your bank account or getting healthy, then you notice what emotions and sensations come up for it when you do it. That's it. And then you do it every day for like 20 minutes, and you just allow that shit to happen. And then you write down what happened afterwards. And that, like, for a while, like, that's what you do. So step 1 is to acknowledge what area you're scared to confront. Step 2 is notice what emotions come up when you are scared to confront it. Step 3 is notice what sensations happen in your body when those emotions come up. Step 4 is to create a daily practice where for 20 minutes a day, you are getting used to allowing those feelings and sensations to surface. So it's like exposure to these, quote, negative feelings and sensations, right? Like when I did cognitive behavioral therapy, I would do things that I was really uncomfortable with. It made me anxious on purpose in a controlled space where I knew that it was going to suck for a specific period of time, but then it was going to be over. So you're like making a 20-minute space for you to, on purpose, think about the thing that scares you and breathe through it. Okay? And then at the end, you make a list of, this is the thing that a lot of people don't do. Okay. So step 5 is actually really important. And most people don't do this. Most people just feel it if they start the embodiment practice and they don't take action. So step 5 is to take action in the area that you're scared to confront. So if you're scared about looking at your bank account, you have to start looking at your bank account. That's part of the exposure. That's part of the embodiment. If you're scared about feeling happy, then do something that you think will make you happy. And you don't have to get it right. You just have to try. So a lot of us with embodiment, especially with the way that it's been kind of shown, I think, on social media and things, make it seem like embodiment looks like dancing on a pole to get empowered through the feminine and meditating and drinking cacao. And those aren't negative things by any means. But the important part of embodiment is the intention that you're setting, the deliberateness. And if you are being aware of how to confront what you're scared of while getting grounded in your body and being aware of what emotions and sensations come up and then taking action, there's really no stopping you. The last thing I would say is to rest and digest everything that you are experiencing. So creating a log and a journal of all the emotions and the sensations, like a list, making a note of each session, what you are doing to help ground yourself, what you're doing to exacerbate those symptoms, what you are doing to take action with. And in terms of like how to potentially, you can also have two things going on, right? You can have something that's kind of like exacerbating the exposure to the feeling, and you can also have an additional practice that is pulling your body down into a grounded space. Because the element of connecting just to our breath without the purpose of the progress of confronting our emotions that we've been disassociating from is also beneficial. It's kind of like self improvement versus self care, right? So self improvement is changing something, progressing. And that is like the calibration and looking at what have we been dissociating from and how are we going to reconnect to that emotion, right? And self care is staying in the place that we are and feeling good while we're there. So there are some methods and modalities for either one, but something that where you don't really necessarily have to think about it, and you can probably look on YouTube and just find some guided rituals, would be things like breath work, hypnosis, sensations walk through, a body scan, a rage practice. That's probably actually much more for the confronting element. A cacao ceremony, a flow practice with yoga, dancing, twerking, a drum circle, deliberately observing your senses, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation. So I just want you to understand that grounding is very helpful. Even just the earthing or grounding, just putting your feet on the ground and connecting to our bodies as a physical organism is extremely helpful for recalibrating our nervous system, for soothing ourselves, for decreasing our anxiety and our stress. Those are very helpful. And it's also very necessary for us to understand what parts of ourselves, what parts of our emotions, what parts of who we want to be, we are disconnecting from out of fear. And we can use embodiment as a tool to confront the parts of ourselves that we have disconnected from and use that to reconnect to them as exposure. So you can do both of these things. And you might need to start with gentle grounding embodiment at first to both get your confidence up and understand what it looks like, and even just soothe your nervous system so that you can even begin exposure. But I do want to really empower you and implore the benefits of self-improvement with the intent to not avoid who you can be and who you already are. That's just covered up by discomfort and dissociation, which is all just another word for fear. Because you have so much power in you, and there's so many reasons why we cover it up in fear. Usually it's because we're so sensitive and so lovely that the world became so difficult for us to navigate. So we did the best that we could, and we just kind of put a blanket up over it, and we thought it was harder to be fully expressed. But honestly, it's just as hard to be a different version of ourselves. So we just kind of have to pick which hard version we're going to do. It's hard to be sensitive in a world that's hard, and it's really hard also to be the wrong version of our truth. So If you want to choose a different path, then you can try embodiment to get you there. So in the embodiment module in the Merriment Makers, so we have this class extended. There's many more things. I also taught, so this is the Reconnect to Your Body Masterclass. I also have a workbook that goes with this. There's an Embodied Cognition Masterclass. There's a Human Design for Embodiment Masterclass and workbook. I explain somatic awareness, and there's a guided somatic awareness practice. So that basically is like a walkthrough of how, like the thing about how to pee, like check if you have to pee. It's very layman's terms how to do that, and then a walkthrough of how to do that for whatever's bothering you. It's a really powerful tool. Trauma and embodiment as a podcast, how to stay in enjoyment as a podcast, why you're really scared to connect to your body podcast, my story of anti-embodiment and how I got here through ketamine and con artists, EFT, tapping, guilt when you're feeling like why you might experience guilt when you're practicing embodiment, how to embody the divine feminine, just like a bunch of ideas, habits you might want to re-examine, a forgiveness script, 6 challenges that you can do out in the field, in the real world. And then we have art, like phone backgrounds, desk wallpapers, strong but still cries art, inspirational quotes and images and lists, Pinterest board, positive affirmations, and a bunch of bonus resources. And speaking of which, I have a free gift for you. There's a embodiment resource kit that is a 19-page resource guide for all things embodiment, and the link I am sending now in the chat. And there are physical tools, information, articles, guided videos, homework assignments, recommendations, and everything else that I found out in the world that include things like tapping, meditation, breathwork, flow, dance, hypnosis, energy work, microdosing, sacred rage, grief, crystals, and things like that. And you can get that for free right there at uncustomary.org/embodiment-resources-kit. And I also have a couple affirmations for you today, which are: I don't qualify or explain why something feels good to me. You can say that out loud if you want with me. I don't qualify or explain why something feels good to me. And I have one more for you. I don't need to understand why something feels good or bad. I don't need to understand why something feels good or bad. And then your homework assignment is to figure out what emotion you have been avoiding. So is it an emotion? Is it a task? What is it that you have been pushing down? What is it that you've been neglecting or avoiding, or just like hoping that something will resolve itself? And if you are still unclear about it, this is what I'll tell you. If you had a magic wand, a magic fairy godmother come to your house and they said, I can fix something for you overnight. Tomorrow it'll be completely different. I can do it as intricately as you want. What do you want me to do? It might be the thing that you're avoiding. The thing that you want magically overnight fixed is usually the thing that you don't want to deal with. Okay, and so figure out what that is. And then I want you to make time to get in your body 20 minutes a day until we meet again for the next 2 weeks. And just try feeling it. And if you need to look up like what sensations and what emotions there are in existence that we have vocabulary for, just Google it. Just Google list of emotions, list of sensations, and just try to if all you do is just put on music, like instrumental music, and just sit there and think about that thing that you're avoiding. That's all you have to do. Realistically, like tangibly, that's all you really need to do, is just sit there and think about it and focus on it. That the opposite of avoiding is focus, right? So just think about the thing that you would fix if you had the magic wand, right? And honestly, when we think about the thing that we don't like, the emotions come up that are unavoidable, that are uncomfortable, that are discomfort. And then it also makes us feel more likely to do something about it. So then take action with it. Okay. And I also have a deck challenge for you from my Merriment Making Missions deck. This is 111 ideas for ways that you can embody, create, and spread joy out in the world, in the streets, in sacred spaces, and with someone special, with art, fun, and kindness. 7 different kinds of creative ways to do this. The cards are rainbow. Woo! And the one that I chose for today's lesson is to put your bare feet out on the ground outside, known as grounding, known as earthing. And there is scientific evidence about why we benefit from doing this as humans. We have positive and negative ions in our bodies. And when you put your feet on the earth, whether it's even in concrete, but just bare feet on grass, nature, any kind, you are like really just kind of recalibrating your electricity in your body. You can read up on it, but just go do it. It'll make you feel better for as long as you can. And don't forget to check out the Anxious to Awesome seminar. That's free. And you can find that again at uncustomary.org/anxiety. That's the ticker that's going across here. Everybody went down at least 2 points, most of the time 3 on the scale of their anxiety. And it's completely free. You get a workbook and yeah. All right. Next time we talk will be it'll be August 26th, and we're going to be talking about making more art. That's our next topic. So feel free to watch all of the past ones until we get there and leave any comments about how this went for you and what you're going to do with embodiment, any thoughts that you figured out with what you're avoiding, what you're going to do to stop avoiding it, and go get your free workbook. Well, it's not a workbook, it's a resources kit on the link that I left for you. And please feel free to also check out the entire embodiment module in the Merriment Makers, which is still right now, I think, on sale. And that's uncustomary.org/merriment-makers. Until then, I will see you on social media, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. You have to feel good to do good.